I really think a lot of these guys, it all becomes sexual.
A lot of what people call masculine behavior in women is just a woman calling them out on their BS.
Yeah.
And
Very true.
and a lot of times
They just don't want pushback.
They just
All right. What's going on, guys? Salam. Welcome to episode 65 of the Thoughtful Banter podcast. I'm your host, Matthew, with my co-host, Hussein.
Yes, sir.
And today we have an episode, and Hussein and I are both Muslims. We try to have good adab, right? So good manners. We're not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect, but like we definitely strive to be the best that we can be. We do want to talk about Islamic figures on this podcast because it just makes sense, right? These are people in our space.
Just to clarify, by Islamic figures, we don't necessarily mean like historical figures or people that were important in our history, but we mean influencers, Islamic influencers, basically as well.
Yeah. Like we want to talk about people who are
Muslim influencers.
Yeah, we want to talk about Muslim influencers and the things like that can easily turn to fitna. We're not trying to do that, but at the same time, like there is this gray area that exists, right? Where it's like, okay, you don't want to cause fitna, but you also, I feel like, have the right to talk about someone who just publishes their own content publicly and says really stupid, bad things. Even if they're Muslim and respected, it's like, this was a really stupid video you made, bro. Like, so are we not allowed to talk about it just because you're Muslim? Let us know what you guys think. We're of the opinion that we can talk about it, but we try to talk about it in a way where we're not trying to like come from the perspective of canceling someone or ruining their career or whatever, right? But I think we're allowed to critique and take apart and dissect what that person is saying. And if they say something that we think is quite honestly stupid, we should be able to say that in a respectful way.
So what are we talking about today, Mahdi? With all that intro, you got to surprise us with someone.
We, this guy came across both of our timelines before. You guys probably have heard of him, or have not heard of him, seen his content. His name is Mahdi Tidjani. He's like a self-help content creator who's focusing more like on the red pill space, talking about women and how to get married. And honestly, I don't want to do too much of an introduction. I just want to play some of these clips of his that we have.
I see brothers falling into when they're talking to a sister for the purpose of marriage is that the moment the conversation progresses and it's getting to a point where it's looking like, you know what, we may well be getting married, he starts to idealize her in her mind. And the thought of not being with her becomes terrifying to him. And many brothers even end up heartbroken when the relationship doesn't work out, even though they never got married. Can you even call it a relationship? Probably not. They never got married. And yet the brother is heartbroken. And this is what I have found, and I'm going to share this with you, and this has been of infinite use to me. And that is, I stopped making dua to Allah for specific things other than the general du'as that we have in the...
So this is like a video of just like decent advice, right? I didn't want to just give like the bad. We got some clips of his that I actually agree with. So like that's decent advice, basically. Like, bro, don't be too specific with your du'as. Don't be too attached. It didn't work out. Move on. This one here is some good advice. I'll play real quick.
How can you get married without being good financially? What puts a woman off is not necessarily the fact that you are broke or that you are not doing great financially. What puts her off is your attitude towards that. Are there gold diggers out there? Yes, of course there are gold diggers out there. But there are plenty of women who would genuinely consider a brother who might not have much to his name at this moment, but he has a can-do attitude. He's a hard worker. He's got that spice about him. He's got that X factor. She can tell this is a man who's... he's going somewhere.
I mean, I think that's good advice. That's pretty much, he just now described you and I. No cap. To be honest.
That's why it's good advice.
That's why it's good advice.
It
does. And that's what we did. Like, we both got married. We were broke. We got that X factor then. Alhamdulillah. We're married now. Things are good. And then there's some other ones that are just like, yeah, let me just
let them speak for themselves.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Just because your money don't mean much to you doesn't mean your money shouldn't mean much to her. Men with disposable incomes often make the common mistake of not making her earn every penny you spend on her. But what happens? Because you haven't forced her to value it, she doesn't value it. And much to your despair, no matter how much more you spend on her, she still doesn't seem to be that into you. Worse still, if you've gotten her used to this dynamic, it's extremely difficult to break. Whenever you spend on your woman or a woman you're considering for marriage, always ask yourself, has she earned it? Or am I trying to buy her love and loyalty? If she's earned it, reward her. This will trigger a positive feedback loop of her behaving even better with you. But if she hasn't, I don't care how much money you make, do not reward her.
I don't care how much you make, it's crazy.
A lot of times, like, sometimes what the actual substance of, like, what the point is these guys make is not necessarily bad, but it's, like, either in the framing or in some kind of, like, some of the terms they use or how they describe certain situations that kind of give away what they actually think. I think in that case, it was probably, like, it probably could have been explained better, but in general, I don't think the point he was saying was necessarily bad. Because in relationships, it's just kind of what happens. You respond to, like, the incentives, and there is a give and take. Like, if you're not getting a specific kind of behavior, a lot of times it's not even conscious when people do this. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this subconsciously. Most of the time, you should be communicating about these issues that you're having with your spouse. But, like, people do this kind of things with everything, not just money.
Yeah.
So, like, the point is not necessarily bad, but we'll get to some of what he actually thinks about more in the following clips. And you'll kind of see, hopefully you'll be able to see what I was talking about.
This is a perfect example right here.
You get into an argument with your wife and boom, she flips that moment you once made yourself vulnerable with her right back on your face. It takes a very special woman to resist the urge of not using your insecurities against you in an argument. Hurt people, and women are experts at this. Always keep a healthy distance between you and her. You are the king, and His Majesty never allows his subjects to become too familiar with him. This is how you maximize her respect for you. And if she does cross that line, punish her. How? Follow me to find out in the next video.
Cringe.
And there we go.
Oh my gosh.
And there we have it. So what are your thoughts, Mahdi?
I mean, there's so much to unpack there. Like what did he say? He said it takes a very special woman to not use your weakness against you. So it's the implication there is like women are like what inherently manipulative and snaky in that aspect. What comes to my mind is, man, who are you picking? Like if this is just his life advice, he must, I don't know, like are your wives just always manipulating you and like you have this distance? Like maybe pick people who don't use your insecurities that you open up to them about when you're vulnerable against you.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying this earlier again, like this attitude is not even something that's necessarily new. Like I've heard this before, like a lot of older guys especially, and by older I mean like 60 plus. They'll tell you like some of these same things, like, oh, don't be like super vulnerable with your wife because the minute she gets a chance to use it against you, she's gonna throw it back in your face. So to your question, it's like, okay, who are y'all picking as wives that they have this, inclination? And if they do, and if someone does have an inclination, could it be coached out of them? And I think maybe that's what he was talking about with like the Punisher part at the end. It's just like extremely cringe in the way that he
very cringe.
Extremely cringe in the way that he like framed it. Again, because like these are things that happen in everyday relationships with everyone. If there's a certain behavior that someone is doing with you and you don't like that behavior, they're doing to you and you don't like that behavior, you'll do one of two things, and usually it's a combination of both. You'll either tell them, hey, I don't like that, knock it off, or you'll start responding to them in a specific way after they do that behavior to get them to stop doing that behavior.
Yeah.
Like you'll try to condition their behavior, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times these things happen in tandem. There's not necessarily anything wrong with it. There's not anything wrong with it. Especially if you're like communicating these things. But it's just the framing of like a king and his subjects.
I'm about to say that's the second part, right? Yeah. Like that's honestly, that's an incorrect framing of a marriage. Like a husband and wife aren't king and subject. If you're going to use the king analogy, king and queen is probably a lot more appropriate.
Because the person who married the king was the queen. It wasn't a subject.
Yeah, I don't know what
a subject.
Yeah. You're not just some subject.
Yeah, exactly.
And we even we just took down like a couple of verses, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but just like a couple of verses about marriage here. This is Surah 30, verse 21. Bismillah. And of his signs is that he created you from yourselves, mates, that you may find tranquility in them, and he placed between you affection and mercy, indeed that are signs for a people who give thought. And then Surah 2, Ayah 187, they are clothing for you and you are clothing for them. Talking about, the husband and wife. It's like, and then, we have all these other hadith that allude
Like
to things like help out your wife around the house.
There's clearly like a closeness, like a bond and a closeness that's being referred to there,
Yeah.
And like that's not
a distance of a subject. Like,
yeah, exactly.
have better taste, bro. That's probably the best piece of advice there.
I think maybe what people are trying to say when they say this, and maybe I'm giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt, but just bear with me. What people are trying to say is that, so like, you'll hear that don't be vulnerable with your wife, and then you hear another like strand of this, which is like, oh, I'm only really like open with my boys. Like you've heard like I'm really myself with my boys. Right?
Yeah.
Like my wife doesn't get like all of me. Like you
give it all to the boys, huh?
I know it sounds a little
sus.
It sounds a little sus.
A little homoerotic, like Fight Clubby, like.
Yeah, but I think what people are getting at is like obviously when you're talking about certain things with certain people, you communicate those things more differently, and maybe the natural way for you to communicate it is more similar to how you communicate it with your male friends.
That's a good point.
But that doesn't necessarily mean there's like, I don't know. I don't think that means there's anything missing. It might be more comfortable. I don't necessarily think there's anything missing, and I don't necessarily think that also makes it better.
Some things like jokes, but no. I mean, like,
no, I mean better in the sense like, I don't know, metaphysically or whatever. Like I don't like, and like yeah, it'll hit better. Maybe it'll hit better for you, but does that make it better actually?
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I understand. And like we know, like there are things that we like that aren't good for us, and things that we don't like that are good for us.
I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that like this is one of those things, but perhaps there's something to that as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think like the issue is like exactly like this framing is so unnecessary, and it leads to so many other potential problems. Not just this framing, but like all the framing that I see in the red pill space. It's like people are giving this framing that's incorrect, but they accidentally maybe give good advice. An example for this is like, if you are inclined to be an a-hole, like a jerk, right? You're inclined to be a jerk. That's not a good thing, right? You're mean to people. You're pushy. All these bad things you do. But the one thing or two things that might be positive if you're a jerk is that maybe you also set boundaries with people.
Like very clear boundaries.
Clear boundaries, and you stand up for yourself. Mm-hmm. Like those are the two good things of being a jerk. But you don't need to be a jerk to do those things. But what happens is, let's say some brother is missing setting boundaries and he's missing standing up for himself with his wife. He gets the red pill advice like, bro, you're a king, you're a lion. Mm-hmm. Your wife is like just some random subject, right? And they just start acting like a jerk. Marriage gets a little bit better. Well, it's because you are a jerk, and in that process, you set boundaries
and enforce them.
But you could have just set boundaries and communicated, and you don't like all of these frameworks, bro. Like we're just going away from Islamic advice, and it's like so clear to me that like we just got to follow Islamic advice, and that's just notice like Islam that like we don't like Islam doesn't give us these stupid analogies because it's very clear like. We should be different things at different times and different circumstances. It's very simple and easy. Like, that's not a hard example. Like,
yeah. No, I mean, I think you make a good point. We should be different things at different times. And like, whenever I hear, so I have 2 points. One is like more broad as far as this genre is concerned, but the other one is like, when you hear things like, oh, I want a wife who's submissive. Oh, I want a wife who's not masculine. My issue with a lot of these phrases or a lot of the terms is that they're super not specific, and a lot of times people don't have clear ideas about what that even means. So like you might have one person who's like, hey, if my wife says anything against what I want to say and I have to say about the household, then she's not submissive. But then the question is like, okay, but what if you're like wrong? what if you're like actually wrong? Do you still want your wife not to say anything? Again, there's like etiquette to like all these kinds of corrections that your wife can make or anyone can make, but I don't see how someone who's so submissive to the point where they won't even tell you when they think you're making a really bad choice or have a bad idea is a good can ever be a good thing in any world. And the same thing with the masculine on the other end with the masculine wife thing. They make this caricature of a woman who's like who's butting heads with them about every little detail, about every little thing. And it's like, bro, the person you just described, you wouldn't want as a male friend either.
Exactly.
No one wants that in a friendship.
Yeah.
Where you're just constantly butting heads. Like it doesn't even seem like you understand what you're talking about because I don't want that in a wife. I don't want that in a friend either.
Yeah, and it goes down back to like the framing, right? The whole framing of masculine and feminine doesn't really make sense. I think it's like the framing should be, does this person match with me in my life? You know, and like you have to know your character traits, and like opposites attract, right? So like if you're one kind of person, then you probably need some opposite attributes in some aspects to help balance you out, right? But like, and people are gonna some people might make it weird, but I think like the things that make a good friend are the things that make a good spouse. Right, except the fact that like, you know, your spouse shouldn't be of the same gender. If like we're talking about Muslims, you know, come on, like if you really think about it, like you want someone who's easy to get along with, someone who's a team player, right? A team player doesn't mean they only play one role. If you can't play one role, sometimes the other person plays the other role. Like if you've had, sometimes you get home, it's just been a long day, you have no bandwidth. Wifey's asking you for this and this and that. You know, because that's usually the role you play, and you just have to be like, you just gotta leave me alone. Like, let me just be by myself. Please just stop bothering me. Like, just for tonight. And she has to play the other role. Like, and then she's, getting things together and whatnot, making you comfortable. If that's something that you've done, or vice versa. If your wife's always cooking and cleaning and taking care of the house, because mashallah, like you're a really great provider, etc. What if she's sick? Is she just no longer feminine because she's literally sick? Like she's on her period and she has like terrible cramps and she's just in the bed all day. Like, is she just no longer feminine because like she has period cramps? Like these are like real things we don't have to like think about in like actual real life. Are you just gonna be like, babe, I just wish you're more feminine right now? Like let's talk about like reality.
Yeah, and then like when you start talking about like it gets even sillier. Okay, I'd like to say this is not to say that I don't think perhaps there's like a gender difference in general, like across, like if you do like an average, like a population average, there might be in general traits that men trend towards and women trend towards. It's like I'm not denying that possibility. What I am denying is like the usefulness of using such strict, like formal. It's not even really formal because they don't have an idea of it, but it seems like super rigid. I guess buckets where you place certain traits and other traits. Reality, most people are like a mix of everything. And then Islamically, ideally, they should be whatever they need to be at whatever specific time, like you mentioned. This is getting a little like philosophical, and I had a conversation with my family about not this, but it was something similar. What is okay? So like, being is being, metaphysical being. So there's you, right? And there's your personality and everything, whatever makes you Mahdi, right? And so we say that in order for you to be you, there is a Mahdiness that you have that exists metaphysically that you can partake in and no one else can partake in, right? There's some kind of defining feature about you that defines your Mahdiness. And those defining features are exclusive to you and no one else can partake in them. So when we talk about femininity and when we talk about masculinity, what are those traits that only people who are masculine can partake in and must exclude everyone who is not masculine? And what are those traits that only women or people who are feminine, whatever, can partake in and exclude everyone else who is outside of that circle?
I don't think there's any.
I don't think there's any. If you actually like break it down to like what it means to be essential to something, like what it means to exist, to have a being, to be some kind of like metaphysical existence, which is that you have to partake in these properties and necessarily exclude other people from them. Otherwise, you're not you.
I mean, I think there's like I don't know, actually. Like, I think there is, and this might all just be physical. It might just come down to like hormonal differences. I do think that there is a way of at least thinking that men just have typically and that women have, and like things like we're good at.
Yeah.
You know?
So
and those are like very physical things oftentimes. Like, I think like a man should protect his family, and everyone should. This is the problem, right? I think everyone should protect their family. Like, if your husband's not home, are you just going to be submissive? Like, no, you're going to fight for your life. But it's like, I think a man is just, that's what he should be doing because of his advantage. And like, that's just his role. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that necessarily like that can be like you can take a pragmatic approach to that and like still have answers. Right. I don't think it necessarily has to be like, this is etched into like the spirit of your soul. I could be completely wrong, but like this is just like an idea. Like once you actually like start thinking about essentiality and like what it means to exist metaphysically as certain things, as certain like concepts, being, it kind of gets tricky making these clean dividing lines between things.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I agree.
And I think the same thing, like the capacity it came up with my family is like when you think about race, it's a similar thing. Is there a blackness that only black people can partake in, and every black person can partake in it, right? And everyone who's non-black cannot partake in it, meaning that even if there's a Chinese person, a black guy, Chinese, grew up across the world, there's something that him and I share that we exclude everyone else from, outside of like our skin tones, right? There's like some kind of essence, like we all like fried chicken or something like that. Like for example,
You said it, not me.
like as an example, like if you go to any black person in the world, they're gonna like fried chicken. Like hypothetically,
I hate that guy. Like, everyone loves fried chicken. Who doesn't like greasy chicken?
I know. Long story short, wrapping all that philosophical jargon and nonsense up, it becomes hard when you start thinking about what these words actually mean. It becomes hard to kind of very strictly and rigidly define and like put these things into buckets. Even you don't even have to get that deep. I think that's why people struggle with even defining what submissive is and like the limits of that submission, right? Or like the limits of that masculinity.
And I'm going to be really honest with you, and maybe again, like, Allah forbid me, right? Like, forgive me, right? Like, maybe I'm just projecting and I'm the creepo here, but I really think a lot of these guys, it all becomes sexual. Like, that's really their underlining agenda. Like when they're talking about this stuff, when they're saying they just want a woman to be submissive and all that. I think these guys' minds are just like riddled with pornography and problematic norms, and they just want basically a completely docile woman.
Yeah, I don't think you're necessarily
in the bedroom and in life in general.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like the majority of them. I think that's definitely a portion. Also, a point I made when we were kind of brainstorming this episode is that a lot of what people call masculine behavior in women is just a woman calling them out on their BS. Yeah, and
very true.
And a lot of times
they just don't want pushback.
They just don't want any pushback, right?
Yeah, and like you have like top of that, like, if they just have some mommy issues on top of that, right? Yeah. They're just seeing the female pushback as like, I don't know, like it's like gender attached like pushback.
Yeah. But again, like, of course there's etiquette to like correcting people and trying to get them to fix their behavior. But at the same time, there's also like, if I have tried to correct this person nicely X amount of times, 100 times, 50 times, 20 times, at some point you're going to stop being as nice, right? And so like people will observe an interaction between a husband and a wife where a wife is calling a husband out on his BS and she's like being very mean and very aggressive and very like nasty about it. And they'll look at that and they'll be like, "Oh, you see this? You don't want this in a wife." And you're like, "Dog, this is the 150th interaction that they've had about this same exact thing."
Yeah. Like there's some context. And not to say you should ever still be rude anyways. Yeah, but that's also just the reality of the relationship. Yeah. Like we've all lost our cool sometimes when someone does something and you're like, "Dude, this is like the 5th time. Like I'm upset."
And I think the reality is that if you have a relationship where expectations are clearly communicated, whenever feelings are hurt, whenever feet are trampled over, that's clearly communicated, and then you guys are taking care of each other's rights, fulfilling each other's rights over each other. And and also having compassion when those rights aren't always able to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
For the most part, you're not going to really run into these issues of submissive versus masculine versus, like for the most part, your wife is going to do the things that she needs to do for you and probably go above and beyond. And then you, as the husband, are also going to do the things you need to do for your wife and probably go above and beyond.
I actually think it makes it harder, like in a marriage, right? Because if you're just being told what things,
makes harder?
these gender boxes that we put tasks into, especially because like if we're Muslims, right? I think the criteria of how we make our decision making should be solely based on Islam, and like these gender boxes aren't really Islamic; they're cultural. So when we say things like, for example, let's say hypothetically, men don't cook. This is pretty much across the board culturally across the entire world, from what I've seen. Men don't cook. Okay, let's say you get married. What if as a man, what if you really enjoy cooking? And furthermore, what if your wife is terrible at cooking?
Yeah.
So you enjoy cooking. You physically, you enjoy cooking. She's bad at cooking. Are you just going to force your wife to cook?
You force your wife to cook so that you force yourself to eat bad food, honestly, because that's like the outcome, right?
And then what if what if then your wife is great at administration and finance, and you're like dyslexic with numbers?
Yeah.
So it's like because you're the man, you're supposed to do the numbers and you're supposed to not do the cooking, right? And then she's supposed to cook and give you a hot meal.
Bro, you know what's so funny is me and you were talking about this. Basically, a lot of like this older generation, maybe like 2-3 generations above us. What they did was they brought in the money, and then their wives handled all of the books.
Yeah, and it seems for all these guys,
all of the accounting was like done by their wives, right?
Yeah,
and so you're looking at it, you're like, this is like not exactly working out the way it's supposed to,
Yeah, and so going back to Mahdi Tidjani, right? I've seen him on plenty of other podcasts. He's putting this content out himself. It's just a bad look. I'm looking at his website right now. Become unyielding, become invincible, become a janissary.
Remember we looked this up.
So
like that.
This is like that Turkish soldier, basically elite soldiers, the Turkish army.
It was something else too. It was like janissary definition. It was like a member of an elite group. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so it's like become alpha.
Basically.
Look at the website right here. Apparently this is supposed to teach us in 6 months you could be generating passive income, red flag. Be in the best physical shape of your life. Be attracting the type of woman you desire. Unlock the ultimate janissarian experience. What's included in the program? There's 4 different programs within it, I guess. 1, masculinity, the art of manhood, physical power, mental acuity, emotional resilience, monetizing. That's a bad name.
No, this is sorry. It is a bad name. This is screaming grift. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm saying
this is screaming
big grift,
and this is screaming preying on stupid young boys. The monetizing, this is the secret to lasting wealth. Monetize your mind masterclass.
What does that mean?
Etsy drop shipping masterclass. Red flag. Instagram DM marriage masterclass.
That's not monetizing. That's the wrong category. That's the wrong category. That's not monetizing. This dude's a grift. Magnetism. What? Whoa. Earning respect and power. Become an asset to society. Are you an asset? Build strong families. Yeah. Attract genuine partnership.
So I guess in general I want.
There's one more. You want to read the last one?
No, I really don't.
Mastery, living and leaving a legacy. This is also really poorly written. A lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Custom tailor guidance, monthly boosts, community of warriors. What were you saying? Sorry, I had to finish it out.
I think I just want to give.
Sorry, it's $97 a month
and $1,000.
$1,000 annually.
Yeah.
A'udhu billah.
Basically, I want to give people a couple tips for like spotting kind of red flaggy individuals. One is like, this dude, what is his background? And that goes for like not just him. That goes for Fresh and Fit. That goes for Andrew Tate. That goes for the Sneako. Like all of these red pill guys, basically what they have to offer is like their expertise is, hey, I lived a life as a dude, and here are the things that worked in my experience.
And I have some money.
And I have some.
And here's my opinion.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is a lot of these guys didn't have some money. They started saying, "I have money. I'm gonna teach you to get money." And you gave them your money,
Exactly.
and like now I got you how to make some money.
Two, if someone speaks super confidently like this, like in this, looking at this program, it seems like there's nothing he's not teaching you. Like he's teaching you how to live
Everything,
like a life. He's teaching you everything.
Are you my dad?
Exactly. And it's like, no, even your dad is not going to be able to do this, right?
Yeah,
like,
no.
like you're going to need mentors. You're going to need friends to teach you some of these things.
What the fatherless people like honestly go for, right? It's like you know you're missing that. They know that too. Like, oh, this, you know, you're missing a void father figure. I could teach you everything.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, the reality is like, one, people who are experts tend not to speak like this. That's number one. Number two, there's just like the reality of things, which is you can't be taught all of this stuff by one person, and anyone who claiming that they can is full of it.
Yeah, I could teach you all this stuff too, bro. Like, well, I can monetizing your mind masterclass, bro. You have to think about content, bro. Get a camera up here and start recording, bro. Monetize your mind. I mean, yeah, it's also like, yeah, like these are 4 domains. He mixed up domains. This is really poorly thought out. Again, I try to give people benefit of the doubt. Like, I look at this brother right here. He's in amazing physical shape. He's clearly a specimen. Dude has like a clear 8-pack. Why not just focus on coaching Muslim men on how to have the dream physique and having energy? Like, his whole thing is like marriage and bedroom stuff. Why not coach people on how to be in great shape and give, like, I don't know, Islamic sex ed or something, right? I mean, he basically already does that anyways, but his whole focus is on polygamy too, which is weird. I'm sorry, that is weird. Like, most people don't need to be practicing polygamy. And I'm not against, I want to be clear. Polygamy is halal, therefore I'm not against it. But it's a weird thing to be, like, coaching polygamy because it's so difficult to be the caliber of person who can actually successfully sustain that. And even if you're able to sustain it, like, I've known people who practice a lifestyle. It's not one that our culture and society here in the West have a framework for. Mm-hmm. Not to say you shouldn't do it, but it's like when I'm saying a framework, it's like there's no social fabric for it. Like, a woman are like kind of like other women gonna look at a woman who's the second wife weird too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you all like imagine all you and your friends, for example, go to a couple's iftar. And your one boy has 3 wives. But you messed up the ratio, Zaki.
Yeah.
And then all the other wives are like, he's going to make my husband think about another. Like, you know, it's just, we don't know what to do with that. I wouldn't know what to do if that happened.
Yeah.
And after, like, sound like
or like
3 wives?
if you want to even get like deeper, like multiple families, like having a family with each wife, you know. I mean, like, this is not to say, this is not even necessarily to say don't do it. This is not to say it's haram. We're not God. We're not the lawmaker. We can't make anything that has already been made okay haram. But just the point is, like, Mahdi's point is, like, it's a strange thing to kind of base your personality around, especially when most people are struggling to just even get one partner. So like why are we jumping to 2, 3, 4? And
also a trend I noticed with the polygamy stuff and seen from some of the content, it's like, you know, again, they're polygamy is halal, but like the way the people are executing a lot of times, it really seems like guys are just bored in the bedroom, right? And they want to switch things up, and they're just constantly cycling through wives. So it's not like a lot of times these brothers want to even, I want a second wife. I understand the responsibilities. This is also a life partner. It's like, I'm bored. I'm married to this kind of woman. I want another flavor. Mm-hmm. I'm bored of this flavor. Now I want another flavor and another flavor. You know, forbid me if that crude analogy, but I think that's honestly the mindset a lot of these guys have. And I think at the end of the day, it breeds immaturity in us. And I think this is a whole different topic, but to dabble in it a bit, I think there is a underlining emotional, sexual immaturity that we as men many times have, and Muslim men have, and we don't acknowledge it or talk about it. And like in Islamic communities, I think what we've been told, quote unquote, the solution is, it's just marriage, and it's not just marriage, because you see guys like this who just get married and they just never stop. I've seen brothers who are like on wife number 8, and they have how many kids? And they just keep running through a woman, and it's like, bro, you're the problem. 8 times in, you come on, bro. Like. This isn't the prophet's time where I can believe each one of these wives died of the pregnancy. Yeah. No, you're broken, and you're just running through a woman, and like there's some kind of thing in you convinced like, this one would fix me. I'll be satisfied with this one. No, you're chasing dopamine. It's like you're scrolling through a woman.
Yeah, and then people like also use the fact that it's halal. I think that's okay to do as a thing to me, as a way to say that it's even beneficial for them to do it. Like, and they won't say that explicitly, but it'll be like, oh, well, why are you getting on me? It's halal. And it's like, you can, there are plenty of things that are halal. And depending on the circumstances can either be not that great or like, yeah, you're by the book, but maybe you're in the spirit of the law. You're kind of like in violation. So just having something being halal is not like, we have a poor understanding of what these categories mean. Yeah. All halal means is it's permissible. Now, just like with multiple things that we know in Islam, there are some times when what's halal can become haram, and there are some times when what's haram can become halal. An easy example is if you're starving and you're in the middle of the desert, the classic ridiculous scenario that's given, it is haram to eat pig. If that's all you have available and you're literally about to die, it's halal to eat that pig.
In fact, it's not just halal. You must eat that pig. Yeah. Because you're about to die.
In the month of Ramadan.
Yeah.
Eating, drinking water, these are all halal, mubah, whatever. At the worst, mubah, right? Meaning there's no ruling one way or another about these things. But in these specific times, in this specific month, in these specific hours, it's not. Like, you're not allowed to do it. Right? So we have these circumstances, right? And it's, I don't know. We could get pretty deep into it, but we can stop there.
No, I think you're cooking.
Okay. I'll just go a little bit further.
Yeah, keep going.
And so like in a marriage, there's a term that scholars use. It's called husnu ma'ashira, which is basically like it's like keeping up the good family life, basically good family relations, good family life between your spouse, your kids, all that kind of stuff. And both male and female are kind of responsible for keeping this up. Now, it could be argued. I'm not saying this one way. This is no fatwa, right? Like, I'm not a scholar. I'm not making a fatwa. But it could be argued that in the same way that a drink of water, which is okay outside of Ramadan, inside of Ramadan, before Maghrib, breaks your fast, and that is haram, that you having a temporary marriage or getting a second wife, and you know that your wife is not going to be okay with that, and that could potentially ruin your husna ma'ashira. It could be argued. I'm not saying this is the case, but it could be argued that similarly there's like an analogous realities that are there, right? It could be the case. And so I don't say that to like, again, this is not any fatwa I'm declaring or anything, but I think people should think a little bit harder about these decisions. Besides just saying, oh, well, it's halal.
Yes, plenty of things like, oh, well, it's halal. it's like a low IQ move. A good example of that as well is like the rights of a man and woman in a relationship. Like the rights are what's halal, right? But oftentimes, if in our relationships we just actually did what my right is, you would not have a relationship. Yeah, you would. The wife charged her husband for breast milk, that would be over very quickly. just for the sake of going broke. It's a woman's right to charge for breast milk. Day 3, I'm broke. Like I'm good. Like I can't afford this.
Yeah.
Charging for breast milk like $25 an hour. Like, yo, You're an employee now.
Yeah, and I think I just want to like on that topic, because sometimes what people will say in response is like, oh well, the reason that that kind of stuff exists is because a woman will never do it, because basically in her fitra, like she's inclined not to do these kind of things, and like it's like
Low
it's
IQ
like
take.
it's like in her fitra, so she's inclined to do this thing, but like for men it has to be a little bit more like explicit and like red line, because it's not necessarily. To that I say there's nothing to suggest that, like there literally exists nothing to suggest that. So not the fitra part. Like I agree that a mother taking care of her kids is in her fitra. I'm talking about the opposite, which is like, for a man, it's like less within his fitra to want to take care of his Islamic responsibility. So it has to be more explicit. Like that, we have nothing for. So, like I don't know what to do with that. Like that's just made up.
Yeah. Now, so are we done with that point?
Yeah. I think that's, I'm just saying. Yeah. Long story short, is halal is not a justification for anything. You have to come with more than that.
Yeah, like you have to think about, like we know, like to an extent Islamically we're in charge of people's feelings. Like if within reason. If your wife gets broken up because you got a second wife and it's all halal, like you have to think, man, like that would suck. Like there's consequences. And again, it's like, why do you feel the need to do this thing so much? Maybe there's some nafsi thing we're supposed to conquer. And again, I think listen, let's have a really honest conversation here. Any man who says if his wife was okay with him having a second wife and it worked out with his lifestyle, any man who says he wouldn't do that is lying. Is lying. Any man that says that wouldn't sound nice, even for a moment, I think it's a snake, because he lying white knight. Right? We're not out here like slamming against polygamy. Right? Okay, like it's halal. If your wife's cool with it, if it's done ethically, I see no problem with it. I just think it, by definition, it is weird because it's out of the norm here. I think even like if you go to like Qatar or Saudi where they maybe practice it a little bit more openly, maybe, I'm just guessing, I don't know. Even then, it's probably not like commonplace. Like half of the dudes, it's probably like the richest men have
I don't
multiple
know.
wives.
I have no idea. Maybe sometimes it's the poorest man. I don't know who knows.
Yeah, I mean, whoever's Allah's like ordained it for, right? At the end of the day. But I'm just saying, like, maybe it might, maybe they could teach me like how like I can understand like that world, right? Like it might be normal in like Qatar or whatever for a guy walking a restaurant, he's got like 3 nagabis with him and like 18 kids, and I'm like, bro, like show me like how y'all interact, because this is weird for me. But yeah, sorry, sidetrack there. Another point I wanted to make is I think like he hasn't been like on a lot of credible things, but he's been on Mahdi Tidjani. He's been on Just Pearly things. I hate Just Pearly things. She's the pick me. She's the redhead pick me.
Yes.
Who's like, women are just worse than men, and she's like, men just do everything. She's terrible. Terrible takes, garbage content. He's been on this thing called Blood Brothers. Never heard of it. It's probably nothing. He's been on this channel called Coach Kareem, and I'm getting this from his website, like as seen on. Coach Kareem is his like Arabic only red pill channel. It's called Red Pill Arabic.
I've never seen
Take
that.
the red pill. I'm gonna play a clip. Can you understand this?
I didn't know he was Arab.
No.
To absurd proposition.
Or maybe.
ابوه وغطت على امي وانا كمان غطت علي قالت لي احترام صار لي اكثر من شهرين بحكيش معها عشان المشكله الشاب ابوي.
Not the Sigma music. I can't. This is his trash content. This is absolutely terrible. This is like a red pill channel for Arabs. God help us all. But he's been on some things like Ali Dawa, right? Muhammad Hijab. Like these are two guys, right? Again, I don't know them, but to my understanding, right, these are two Muslim brothers who genuinely care about the ummah. They put their necks out on the line to make content for Muslims. They debate the enemies of Islam, right? Like they put themselves out there, and like debate for us. Like Muhammad Hijab's like freaking standing up for Palestine. Like Ali Dawa. Like, the point I'm trying to make is like I think they're somewhat credible, at the very least, and like they're like not just like smart guys. I think they're like religious. he's been on Gabriel Romani. I don't think he's a big name. I just looked up his channel, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe on things besides YouTube, he's a bigger deal. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is like Mohammed Hijab, Ali Dalwa, like if you are having this guy Mahdi on, like can y'all do a better job of like sifting through people? Like, are we just having on anyone? Are we just giving any Muslim a platform now? Like, where's the bar? Are we just giving any Muslim man a platform just because he says the things we like? Like, is it as simple as me putting on a kufi and saying, "Brothers, we gotta put the bents in line. We have to be masculine, have masculine frame." Like, the bar is just so low, and all we gotta just say is like, "We Muslim." Like Andrew Tate's an example. All we gotta say is we Muslim. Habibi, at some point the bar's gotta be a little higher than I'm Muslim, because anyone could do shahada and then go and live any lifestyle, and by definition they're Muslim because they took shahada. That's my understanding. Yeah. And
as long as they don't stop believing in the two things that make the shahada, that there's only one God and Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of God. Then
yeah, and you can believe all that and still drink and still do zina and still get involved with interest in every single haram thing besides, I guess, shirk and be Muslim. So what's the bar? Because I mean, like this guy Mahdi, I mean, he just be posting just shirtless pics of him just doing things shirtless, and then like he blurs it and then he blurs the belly button and posts it. But you were out there shirtless the whole time.
Yeah,
Habibi. Right, and it's like this is just cringe. And again, it's like I don't want to take someone's livelihood away. If this is what he's doing, like, okay, this is what he's doing. I'm sure he will be great to hang out with. Go some dinner. He's probably funny. He's probably funny. He probably like go to the gym. We gotta go work out.
We said this about Andrew Tate too. Like, we were like, Andrew Tate is extremely charismatic. Like we probably have a good time if we hung out with him, right? And like we made a point not to touch on things we we disagreed with him about, right?
Even if we did, he might make us laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about, bro? Yeah. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Thoughtful Banter Podcast. You guys can support the channel by heading over to our Patreon. The first link down below, or patreon.com/thoughtful banters to support this podcast. Keep it going, guys. Let us know if you enjoyed this episode. This is Mahdi and Hussein with Thoughtful Banter, and we are out.
Peace.